She pushed her cleaning cart through the same hallways for 15 years, listening to engineers mock her stories about what she saw in the Nevada desert. They called her crazy, delusional, just another old woman who watched too much sci-fi. But when a young aerospace engineer bent down to pick up a dropped pen and caught a glimpse of the faded tattoo on her wrist, everything changed. Not because it was flashy or colorful, but because it wasn't. It was a symbol you don't just ink, you earn. A patch from a mission that officially never existed. From a program the government spent decades denying. And when he asked her quietly where she got it, the entire laboratory fell silent because her answer didn't come with explanations, just 3 words and a year that suddenly made everyone realize they'd been laughing at a legend. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden genius, forgotten sacrifice, and the price of keeping secrets, tell me in the comments where are you watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they never disappear again. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena buzzed with controlled chaos. Engineers hunched over monitors displaying data from Mars rovers, calculating trajectories for deep space probe. The air vibrated with humanity's reach toward the stars. Coffee cups lined every surface. Whiteboards covered in equations that would make most people's heads spin. But most people never paid attention to the woman who pushed her cleaning cart through these hallways every morning at 6 a.m. sharp. Her name was Dr. Elena Martinez, though the badge clipped to her gray uniform simply read E. Martinez, Custodial Services. She was 62 years old and had been mopping the same floors for exactly 15 years. Not that anyone was counting. Certainly not the brilliant minds who hurried past her with barely a glance. Elena had learned long ago to keep her head down and her mouth shut. Well, mostly shut. Sometimes the memories leaked out when she overheard conversations about atmospheric anomalies or unidentified aerial phenomena. She couldn't help but mutter under her breath, "That's not how it works," she'd whisper, or "They're looking in the wrong place." The engineers would glance at her with amusement. The crazy cleaning lady was at it again. Dr. Sarah Chen was different. At 28, she was one of the youngest senior engineers at JPL, with a doctorate from MIT and a reputation for asking the right questions at wrong times. She worked longer hours than most, often staying until custodial staff began evening rounds. But lately, she'd been noticing Elena. The way Elena's eyes would linger on mission displays, not with casual curiosity, but with focused intensity. The way she'd pause at workstations to stare at equations with an expression Sarah couldn't place. Recognition, frustration, something deeper. And then there were the mutterings. "Plasma field distortion," Elena had whispered one evening as she emptied Sarah's trash. Sarah had been working on atmospheric entry calculations, struggling with unusual energy readings. She looked up, startled. "Excuse me?" Elena had frozen, cloth in hand, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. "Nothing, sorry, just talking to myself." The incident might have been forgotten if it hadn't happened again. Each time, Elena's quiet comments were eerily relevant to whatever problem Sarah was wrestling with. The other engineers noticed too, but their reactions were less charitable. "The old lady's lost it," Jake Morrison announced one afternoon, loud enough for Elena to hear. Jake was 35, cocky, convinced his Stanford MBA made him smarter than everyone else. "Yesterday, she told me my satellite trajectory calculations were thinking too linearly, like she knows the first thing about orbital mechanics." His colleague, Dr. Richard Hayes, chuckled. "What's next? Is she going to tell us she used to work for NASA?" "Oh, she has," Jake replied with mock seriousness. "Haven't you heard her stories? Apparently, she was some kind of secret scientist, worked on classified projects, saw things in the desert that changed everything." He made air quotes. "Classic delusions of grandeur." Elena's shoulders tensed as she wiped down a nearby desk, but she said nothing. Better to let them think what they wanted. It was safer that way. But Sarah found herself growing uncomfortable with the casual cruelty. Those lucky guesses about technical problems were adding up to something more than coincidence. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in late September. Sarah was alone in the lab, wrestling with a problem that had been keeping her awake for weeks. The Deep Space Communications Array had been picking up unusual signals from the outer solar system, patterns that didn't match any known natural phenomena. The data was classified at the highest levels. Sarah was stumped. The signals came in bursts, lasting exactly 4.7 seconds each, at intervals that followed no mathematical progression she could identify. The frequency patterns were unlike anything in their databases. Elena was working through the lab with usual efficiency. She moved quietly, almost invisibly. Sarah barely noticed her until she paused beside Sarah's workstation, ostensibly to clean, but Sarah caught her glancing at the monitor. For just a moment, Elena's carefully neutral expression cracked. Her eyes widened slightly, and her cleaning cloth stopped moving. Sarah watched as Elena's lips moved silently, as if running calculation. "Problem with the data?" Elena asked quietly. Sarah looked around. They were alone. "I'm sorry." Elena hesitated, then nodded toward the screen. "The signal patterns, they're giving you trouble." This was a direct observation about classified information Elena shouldn't know existed. Sarah's training told her to shut down the conversation immediately, but something in the older woman's eyes stopped her. "How do you know what I'm working on?" Elena's face went through fear, calculation, resignation, and finally, relief. She set down her cleaning supplies and looked directly at Sarah for the first time. "Because I've seen those patterns before," Elena said simply. 35 years ago, in a facility that officially doesn't exist, working on a project that never happened. Sarah stared at her. "What facility?" Elena glanced around the empty lab, then pulled up a chair. When she spoke, her voice carried weight that hadn't been there before. Gone was the timid cleaning lady. In her place sat someone who spoke with quiet authority. "Have you ever heard of Project Blue Book?" Everyone in aerospace had heard of Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation program that ran from 1952 to 1969. "Of course," Sarah replied. "Blue Book was the public face," Elena continued. "What they showed Congress, what they let newspapers write about. But there was another program, deeper. They called it Project Deep Sky, and it ran for 23 years after Blue Book was officially shut down." Sarah's scientific skepticism warred with growing curiosity. "And you worked on this Deep Sky?" "I was the lead atmospheric physicist," Elena said matter-of-factly. "We operated out of a facility in Nevada, about 60 miles northwest of Groom Lake. Our job was to analyze and reverse engineer technology that didn't originate on this planet." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Everything in her training said this was fantasy, but those signal patterns on her screen suddenly felt less mysterious. "Show me," Sarah said quietly. Elena turned to the keyboard and began typing with fluency that made Sarah's eyebrows rise. Her fingers moved with confidence of someone who'd spent decades working with similar systems. She pulled up analysis tools Sarah recognized but had never mastered, ran the signal data through filters Sarah didn't know existed. Within minutes, patterns began to emerge from chaos. "The 4.7-second duration isn't random," Elena explained as graphs populated the screen. "It's a carrier wave designed to penetrate atmospheric interference. And these frequency shifts you thought were noise? They're not. They're a mathematical progression based on prime numbers, compressed using an algorithm we developed in 1987. Sarah watched in stunned silence as Elena deconstructed the mysterious signals with surgical precision. Every explanation was technical, detailed, utterly convincing. This wasn't rambling of a delusional person. This was work of someone who understood the data better than anyone else in the building. "How?" Sarah whispered. Elena paused her typing and looked at Sarah with sad eyes. "Because we've been listening to signals like these for 40 years. The difference is, now they're talking back." Before Sarah could ask what that meant, Elena rolled up her left sleeve. The tattoo was small, maybe 2 inches across, positioned on the inside of her wrist where it would normally be hidden. It wasn't the kind you got at a parlor. The lines were too precise, the design too specific. It looked more like military insignia than body art, faded from decades, but still clearly visible. Sarah leaned closer. The design showed a stylized Earth surrounded by stars, with what looked like a radio telescope dish in the foreground. Beneath it, in small text, were the words Project Deep Sky, 1978 to 2001, and a series of classification numbers. "You don't get ink like this unless you earned it," Elena said quietly. "And you don't earn it by mopping floors." Sarah's mind raced through implications. If Elena was telling the truth, and evidence on her screen suggested she was, then the woman JPL's engineers had been mocking for 15 years was one of the most qualified people on the planet to analyze the very data keeping them up at night. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why are you here? Why are you cleaning floors when you could be..." "Could be what?" Elena's voice carried bitterness that hadn't been there before. "Could be leading a research team? Could be publishing papers?" She gestured around the lab with a sweeping motion. "This is what happens when you spend 23 years working on projects that don't exist for a government that doesn't acknowledge your service. You can't put UFO researcher on a resume, Sarah. You can't list alien technology analysis as work experience. When Deep Sky was shut down in 2001, they gave us new identities, modest pensions, and very clear instructions about what would happen if we ever talked." Elena's fingers traced the edge of her tattoo absently. "I had a doctorate in atmospheric physics from Caltech. I published 14 papers on electromagnetic field theory before I was recruited. I was 31 years old and convinced I was going to change the world. And maybe I did, in ways that will never see daylight. But but officially, I never existed. The weight of Elena's story settled over Sarah. She thought about her own career, her ambitions, the recognition she craved. The idea of having it all erased was almost incomprehensible. "So you came here," Sarah said, "to JPL. I needed work," Elena replied simply. "And I wanted to stay close to the science, even if it meant cleaning up after people half my age who think they're discovering things I figured out in the 80s. Elena turned back to the computer, where signal analysis was still running. New patterns continued to emerge. "But these signals," she said, voice taking on urgency Sarah hadn't heard before. "These are different, stronger, more sophisticated, and they're not coming from where you think they are." "What do you mean?" Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up star charts and trajectory calculations. "Your team thinks these signals originate from deep space. That's because you're using conventional triangulation methods. But if you factor in gravitational lensing effects I discovered in 1994, the display shifted, showing a new calculation that made Sarah's breath catch. According to Elena's math, the signals weren't coming from outer solar system at all. They were much closer. "Earth orbit," Sarah whispered. "Not just Earth orbit," Elena replied grimly. "Geosynchronous orbit. Same position, same distance for the past 6 months. Someone, or something, has been watching us, and now they're trying to make contact." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If Elena was right, if there really was something artificial in Earth orbit sending these signals, then everything they thought they knew was wrong. "We have to tell someone," Sarah said. "Tell them what?" Elena asked sadly. "That the crazy cleaning lady cracked a classified communication protocol using knowledge from a program that doesn't exist? That there's possibly an alien spacecraft in our backyard, and the only person qualified to do anything about it has been emptying your trash cans for 15 years. That's not your choice to make," Sarah protested. "Isn't it?" Elena stood up, returning to her cleaning supplies. "I've been keeping this secret for 22 years, Sarah. But you're young, ambitious, talented. You have a career to protect. Don't throw it away on the word of a woman nobody believes." But as Elena moved to leave, Sarah made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Wait," Elena paused, mop bucket in hand. "Those equations you used, the gravitational lensing calculations, if I could verify them independently, if I could prove your methodology works, you'd what? Give me credit? We both know that's not how this works." Sarah stood up, moving between Elena and the exit. "No, I'd give you back your life." Elena's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Dr. Martinez." Sarah used Elena's title deliberately, and she saw the older woman flinch at hearing it spoken aloud after so many years. "I'm the lead researcher on this project. If I can verify your work, if your analysis proves correct, I can request a security clearance review, emergency consultation privileges. The government might have buried your past, but they can't ignore present-day results." For the first time since their conversation began, Elena looked uncertain. "You don't understand the forces you'd be going up against," she said quietly. "The people who shut down Deep Sky, who erased our records, who made sure we'd never threaten their version of reality again. They're still out there, Sarah, still in power. Then maybe it's time someone watched them back." Elena studied Sarah's face for a long moment, as if trying to read something written in a language she'd forgotten. Hope, maybe, or courage, or just the reckless confidence of someone young enough to believe truth always wins. Finally, she set down her cleaning supplies and returned to the computer. Over the next 3 hours, Elena walked Sarah through 40 years of suppressed scientific discovery. She explained dark current theory, demonstrated gravitational lensing techniques that didn't exist in any textbook, and showed Sarah how to detect artificial objects in space using methods NASA had never dreamed of. By midnight, they had traced the mysterious signals to their source, a metallic object roughly the size of a city bus, maintaining perfect geosynchronous orbit above the Pacific Ocean. It had been there for at least 6 months, broadcasting mathematical patterns on a frequency Earth's listening stations had been designed to ignore. "It's a probe," Elena said with quiet certainty. "Automated, probably. Designed to study us from a distance and report back to wherever it came from." "How can you be so sure?" Elena smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her. "Because it's using our own communication protocols. The mathematical progressions, the frequency modulations, even the timing patterns, they're all based on techniques we developed at Deep Sky in the 1990s. Someone has been listening to us for a very long time, Sarah, learning from us, and now they're using our own language to say hello." The implications were staggering. Sarah sat back, trying to process what she'd learned, not just about the signals or the probe, but about the woman sitting beside beside her. Elena Martinez wasn't just a brilliant scientist who'd been erased from history. She might be humanity's best hope for understanding what was happening above them. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked. Elena looked at the computer screen, where the probe's location was marked with a small red dot. "Now," she said, "we break some rules. What happened next would be talked about in aerospace circles for decades, though the official story would never mention Elena's name. Dr. Sarah Chen submitted an emergency research proposal that night, requesting immediate access to the Deep Space Communications Array. She submitted Elena's gravitational lensing calculations under her own name, along with trajectory data that pinpointed the mysterious object's location with unprecedented accuracy. By morning, JPL's entire senior staff was in emergency session. By afternoon, NASA headquarters was involved. By evening, the proposal had reached the Pentagon. Elena spent the next week in what she called productive invisibility. She continued custodial duties during the day, listening to excited conversations about breakthrough discoveries. At night, she worked with Sarah to refine their analysis and develop strategies for potential contact. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. After 15 years of being ignored and mocked, Elena was once again at the center of humanity's most important scientific endeavor. The difference was, this time, she had an ally willing to risk everything to make sure she got the recognition she deserved. On October 15th, NASA officially confirmed the existence of an artificial object in Earth orbit. The announcement was carefully worded, referring to unknown manufactured material of non-terrestrial origin. The media exploded with speculation. Dr. Sarah Chen became an overnight celebrity, the young genius who'd cracked the mystery that had baffled the world's greatest minds. She appeared on news programs, gave interviews, and found herself nominated for every major award in aerospace engineering. And throughout it all, Elena Martinez continued to push her cleaning cart through JPL's hallways, invisible as ever to most people around her. But everything had changed. The other engineers no longer mocked Elena's quiet comments. When she muttered corrections or offered insights, people listened. Word spread quietly about the cleaning lady, who seemed to know things she shouldn't know. Dr. Richard Hayes approached Elena one morning as she wiped down his workstation. "Elena," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time in 15 years, "I owe you an apology. Several of us do." Elena paused in her cleaning, looking up at him with carefully neutral eyes. "We didn't know," Hayes continued, "about your background, about what you'd accomplished. Sarah told us some of it. Not everything, I'm sure, but enough to make us realize we've been idiots." Elena nodded slowly. "People see what they expect to see, Doctor." "Hayes, I learned long ago not to take it personally, but that's just it," Hayes said. "You should take it personally. What we did, what we said about you behind your back, the way we treated you like you were invisible, that was personal." He paused, looking around the lab where Elena had worked in silence for so many years. "I heard about your real background. Caltech, wasn't it? Before the classified work?" "Caltech," Elena confirmed gently. "Jesus, you've got more credentials than half our senior staff, and we've been treating you like—" He struggled for words. "Like the help?" Elena suggested with a slight smile. "I was going to say like you didn't matter, but you do matter, Elena. What you know, what you've done, what you've contributed, it matters. And I'm sorry it took us 15 years to figure that out." Elena resumed her cleaning, but her movements were less mechanical now, more relaxed. "Dr. Hayes," she said after a moment, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "That gravitational wave detection algorithm you've been working on for 3 months, the one giving you inconsistent results." Hayes nodded, surprised. He hadn't realized Elena had been paying attention to his work. "Try running it through a Fourier transform filter before applying gravitational corrections," Elena suggested. "I think you'll find the inconsistencies disappear." Hayes stared at her. The suggestion was elegant, sophisticated, exactly the kind of insight that had been eluding him for weeks. That afternoon, Hayes ran Elena's suggested algorithm. The results were flawless. For the first time in 3 months, his gravitational wave data made perfect sense. Over the following weeks, Elena quietly assisted with a dozen different projects, offering insights that consistently proved correct. Word spread through JPL's informal networks about the remarkable woman who'd been hiding in plain sight for 15 years. But Elena's most important work continued to be with Sarah, analyzing signals from the mysterious probe and preparing for what they both knew was coming. First contact. The probe had begun transmitting more complex patterns, mathematical sequences that seemed designed to test Earth's ability to decode increasingly sophisticated information. Elena and Sarah worked through the night, mapping these transmissions and formulating responses. "It's like a cosmic intelligence test," Elena explained during one of their late-night sessions. "They're starting with basic concepts and gradually increasing complexity. They want to know how much we we understand before they reveal anything important. What happens when we pass the test? Sarah asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at data streaming across their monitors. I think, she said finally, we're about to find out. 3 weeks after NASA's announcement, the signals changed dramatically. Instead of mathematical sequences, the transmissions began containing what appeared to be technical specifications, diagrams, blueprints, instructions for building something. Elena recognized the format immediately. It's a communication device, she told Sarah, her voice tight with excitement and fear. They're sending us plans for a transponder that can interface directly with their technology. If we build this, we'll be able to establish real-time communication with whatever intelligence is controlling that probe. Sarah studied the technical diagrams filling their screens. The design was elegant, sophisticated, completely unlike anything in Earth's technology base. Building it would require materials and techniques at the very edge of human capability. Can we do it? She asked. Elena nodded slowly. We can. The question is whether we should. What do you mean? Once we make contact, once we open that communication channel, there's no going back. We'll be announcing our presence to the galaxy in a way that can never be undone. Are we ready for that responsibility? Sarah looked at Elena, this remarkable woman who'd spent decades carrying impossible secrets and made the only choice that felt right. I don't know, she admitted, but I know we're not going to figure it out by hiding. And I know that if anyone on Earth is qualified to guide us through first contact, it's you. Elena smiled, and for the first time in 22 years, she allowed herself to feel something she'd thought was lost forever: hope. Then let's build ourselves a telephone, she said, and see who answers when we call. The device was completed in secret over the next month, built in a shielded laboratory beneath JPL using components that officially didn't exist. Elena oversaw every aspect of construction, drawing on decades of experience with technology that existed in spaces between official science and impossible reality. When they activated it for the first time, Elena's hands were shaking. The response was immediate. Not words, not sounds, but something deeper: understanding, recognition, the sense of intelligence, vast and ancient and impossibly patient, reaching across darkness of space to touch the minds of 2 women in an underground laboratory in California. And in that moment of contact, Elena Martinez, who had been erased from history, forgotten by her government, and reduced to cleaning other people's discoveries, became the first human being to speak directly with an intelligence from another world. The conversation lasted 4 hours and changed everything. For now, Elena continues to push her cleaning cart through JPL's hallways, invisible to most but respected by those who matter. She's no longer just the crazy cleaning lady who talks about aliens. She's Dr. Elena Martinez, consultant on Project Deep Contact, humanity's first and most important ambassador to the stars. And every morning, when she rolls up her sleeves to begin another day, the faded tattoo on her wrist catches the light just right, reminding everyone who cares to look that legends often hide in the most unexpected places. Sometimes the most important people in the room are the ones nobody notices. Sometimes the greatest secrets are carried by those who've learned the value of silence. And sometimes the future of humanity rests in the hands of a woman with a mop bucket and 40 years of knowledge that officially never existed. Elena Martinez knows who she is. After 22 years of enforced anonymity, she's finally ready to let the world know too. The aliens, it turns out, were never the secret. The secret was the remarkable woman who'd been waiting patiently for someone to ask the right questions. Now they had their answers, and Earth would never be the same.